Shalom to the elect of Israel, to the hopeful elect of Israel, you Hebrew Israelites, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, West Indians, and Haitians. Got to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushua, the Most High, the Heavenly Father. His Hebrew name is Yahweh, not Yahweh, not Jehovah, not God, not Elohim, not Most High, not Lord, not Yah, not Jah, not Ahaya, not Allah, not Abba, not Yahuwah, not Hashem, not Yahweh, Haveh, Vaveh. It's Yahweh. And his only God son name in the Hebrew is Yahweh Shah. Not Yahshua, not Yeshua, not Jesus Christos, not Jesus Christ, not Serapis Christos, not Yeshaya, not Yehoshua, not Yahusha, not Yeshua, not Jesus Christos. It's Yahweh Shah. So got to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shah, Bahashem Rikah Kodash. Double honors to the apostles, elder, bishop, and elders of Great Millstone, who well, who teach well, who are the apostles and elders of all of Israel, whether accepted or not. In a sense, this salutation to all that can believe in this truth and pushing this truth with the four winds of the earth, the entire world, shedding light to the whole elect. Shalom to the outworld who are listening learning. If you sis who are listening learning. I'm Isaiah from GMS 11, Camp Prophet of Doom, coming at you with a lesson in truth, fact, faith, and notification. Another day notification, Lord wouldn't be edified. And this is copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing non-profit educational personal use tips to balance in favor of fair use. This is for educational purposes only. This is not for monetary gain. I do not own a copyright to this video. This is for educational purposes only. Lord willing.
When I want to speak to you about the consequences of Germany potentially leaving NATO, depending upon the outcome of the German elections, and Israel potentially invading Egypt.
This, of course, would be adding insult to injury on a strategic scale that's hard to even describe. The rest of the world will be horrified. This would represent a complete revision and return to imperialism and colonialism.
Well, how unstable is NATO today, and how would that instability be exacerbated if the United States or Germany withdrew?
First of all, without Germany, there is no, let's be frank. Germany is a nation of 80 million. In economic and military terms, it is indispensable to the survival of not only NATO, but the European Union. And I would argue that both organizations are in very, very fragile condition. NATO presents a good front with the help of a media that is largely controlled by intelligence services in the West, designed to portray success in places like Ukraine, where there has been nothing but failure. But this is all falling apart because of the economic reality. Germany has been essentially subjected to pasteurization on the model of the Morgenthau Plan at the end of World War II, a plan which we considered and then rejected, but was put forward by Morgenthau. The combination of deindustrialization with the influx of millions of non-Europeans, primarily people from the Middle East and North Africa, has turned Germany into a catastrophe. The population knows it, and the population is now ready to change horses and to remove the people in Berlin that are responsible and to put in a new government. This new government has made it very clear that they do not necessarily agree with the assumption that Germany's membership in NATO is a benefit to Germany, or that Germany's membership in the European Union is necessarily a benefit. Germany is the convenient whipping boy who's blamed for everything that everyone everywhere in Europe doesn't like. And it's stupid, and they're sick of it. And I think we're going to see a rising tide of German nationalism that charts a fundamentally new course. And that course will take Germany back to where it spent most of its time over the last 300 years. And that is as a partner, strategic partner for Russia.
Do you see similar events unfolding in Austria, the government of which collapsed shortly after Chancellor Scholz's government collapsed in Germany?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the The Austrians are different from the Germans in many of their views of foreign policy, and they have a different vision for the future from the Germans, but they share a similar interest, and that interest is in good relations with Russia and in avoiding war in Europe. And so, yes, what's happened in Austria and in Germany is just the beginning, I think, of a dramatic change across Europe. I mean, stop and think. We are the people that destroyed the Nord Stream pipeline.
Right.
And I remember in 2019 and 2020, discussing these things when I was in the Trump administration, brief though it was, and I actually wrote a memorandum that said, whatever you do, stop treating the Nord Stream 2 as some sort of security threat to the United States or Germany, because it isn't. But everyone insisted that it was, and said this would make Germany permanently dependent upon Russia. Well, we destroyed it. We destroyed the economy, and we destroyed industry in Germany as a result. And now we're going to see the Germans make a 180-degree turn to the east, which is where it has spent its time for the most part over the last 300 years, certainly economically and increasingly politically.
How, if Donald Trump called you and asked you to advise him on whether we should stay in NATO, what would you tell him?
I think what we need to do, and he certainly, I think, thought in these terms. I don't know what he thinks today. It's not a question of us staying or leaving. NATO is in a very, very fragile condition. And whether we stay or leave and what role we play in Europe is a matter for decision by the Europeans. We act as though whatever we do is consistent with whatever Europe wants. That's not necessarily the case. The views of us, our strategic utility to them, vary from country to country. So I think what has to happen ultimately is that Europe has to Europeanize NATO. Right now, without us, without our intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, command and control, communications backbone, NATO is moribund. So you've got to have a recognition in Europe that if they're going to be viable at all, whatever alliance structure they choose, and you may see in the future regional alliances different from NATO based on regional interests that diverge sharply from ours. And if that's the case, that's fine, but we should step back and say, we will support you in what you want to do, but you must command NATO. In other words, a European four-star, not an American four-star, should be in Mons. And the Europeans should dominate this structure, not us. They have to take control or take responsibility for themselves. This is something that would say from time to time, so is Macron, but nobody's been willing to step up and do the job. They've got to do the job because the nature of our financial situation, and frankly theirs, mandates it. We simply are not going to be able to afford to do in the future what we've done in the past. So Europeanizing NATO has to happen. That's something they've got to do. We need to step back from it. And that involves a reduction of our profile, a reduction in our forces over there. No question about it. This is the kind of thing that we had an opportunity in 2021 and 2022 with the Russians to discuss a comprehensive re-examination of the security structure in Europe. Because we knew then, as we know now, that you can't have a discussion of European security without Russian participation.
Right.
You cannot have a discussion of what happens in Europe and its future, economically or militarily, without Berlin. Yet we act as though no one matters but Washington. That's wrong.
We're just concluding an administration that refused even to speak to the Russians. We both know that. But General Keith Kellogg, pardon me, who President Trump has indicated he wants to be his principal emissary and advisor on Ukraine and Russia, sounded the other day like he had just had breakfast with Tony Blinken when he is reported to have said, I didn't hear it, I didn't see it, but it has been reported and not denied, that he said if Putin doesn't discuss quickly the concept of a ceasefire, we'll send more ammunition, military gear, and equipment to Ukraine. How crazy is that?
Well, it's worse than crazy. There are three things. First of all, we are risking a direct confrontation with Russia. We don't understand and don't care to listen to people who tell us that the Russians are at the precipice of going to war against us. In other words, they're asking themselves, what's the point of trying to talk to the Americans, to negotiate anything with them, because there's no evidence that they will keep their word. There's no evidence that they will honor any agreement we make. So under these circumstances, why not just mobilize the country and strike to the west all the way to the Polish border? This is frightening, and it should upset people. It's not something that the Russians want to do. But when you hear the kind of thing that you just mentioned uttered by General Kellogg, that suggests that they may not have any choice.
Wow.
Again, it's a failure to admit that Russia has any legitimate interest whatsoever. And they do have legitimate interests. And we ought to recognize that. We need to stop treating them as the red-headed stepchild that has no rights, no opportunity to speak. And then we also need to look at Europe and understand Europe is rapidly slipping from our grasp. If you listen to Aliza Weidel, who leads the Alternative for Germany, and she's a very competent person, she's very smart, and she's absolutely right. She says the Germans have to stop being serfs, stop pretending that we're slaves, obligated to do whatever everybody else tells us to do, particularly Washington. We must be Germans. We must take some sort of understanding of our own interests and instrumentalize those. In other words, we have to pursue what we think is in our interest, in the interest of Europe, in the interest of Central East Europe, because we don't want a war with Russia. Now, under those circumstances, the idea that we should now increase sanctions or find new ways to punish Russia and harm it is sheer lunacy, unless we want to accelerate a gradual disengagement from Europe, which I think is inevitable, and turn it into a rout where we look ridiculous on the way out.
Not to aggravate you, but here is
Why
another.
not? Why not? Might as well. We're already there.
I love you, Colonel. You know that. Here's another clip from Secretary Blinken, arguably as detached from reality as the last one. It's a little bit longer, but I need your views on it. Chris, cut number one.
Where the line is drawn on the map, at this point, I don't think is fundamentally going to change very much. The real question is, can we make sure that Ukraine is in a position to move forward strongly?
That the areas that Russia controls, you feel will have to be ceded?
Ceded is not the question. The question is the line, as a practical matter, in the foreseeable future, is unlikely to move very much. Ukraine's claim on that territory will always be there. And the question is, will they find ways, with the support of others, to regain territory that's been lost? I think the critical thing now going forward is this. If there is going to be a resolution, or at least a near-term resolution, because it's unlikely that Putin will give up on his ambitions. If there's a ceasefire, then in Putin's mind, the ceasefire is likely to give him time to rest, to refit, to reattack at some point in the future. So what's going to be critical to make sure that any ceasefire that comes about is actually enduring is to make sure that Ukraine has the capacity going forward to deter further aggression. And that can come in many forms. It could come through NATO, and we put Ukraine on a path to NATO membership. It could come through security assurances, commitments, guarantees by different countries to make sure that Russia knows that if it reattacks, it's going to have a big problem. That, I think, is going to be critical to making sure that any deal that's negotiated actually endures and then allows Ukraine the space, the time to grow strong as.
How detached from reality can he be when he says we put Ukraine on a path to NATO membership?
Keep in mind, Judge, that there are many people like Mr. Blinken inside the Beltway at the moment. They're members of the so-called Uniparty. They were telling us back in January of 2022 that the Russians would not dare to intervene in eastern Ukraine to protect Russians from Ukrainians, that they would never challenge NATO. Then they told us once they did move into eastern Ukraine that they would be defeated, that the Ukrainian army was superior, and they were winning every engagement. We now know, if we look back on that track record, that they were 100% incorrect. The Russians have won this war. It's not a question of can the Russians move further west? It's the question is, will they? And have they decided to do so? And if they do, how far will they go? I think that this line could move. It could move right up to the Dnieper River, and it could eventually include Odessa as well as Kharkov in the east. He's dead wrong. But then he's been dead wrong about everything. And the notion that somehow or another we can't trust them is absurd. Look at the arms control agreements that we abandoned, that we walked away from. Look at the understandings that we had with the Russians about a whole range of things, and we walked away from them. And we've tried to punish them and harm them when in fact they've done nothing to us at all. This is what makes no sense. He lives in a world that's not simply divorced from reality. It's not in the same universe. But this is why debating or discussing or developing any dialogue in Washington with anyone about the subject is impossible. They don't have the same facts. In fact, they don't have the facts at all, nor are they willing to listen to them.
Is a long-term peaceful relationship between the United States and Russia even feasible, with
Yes.
given the mentality in the West?
It is absolutely feasible, and it's a more natural state of affairs than anything that we've seen thus far. The problem we have is not with the American people. The average American, if you pull him aside in Kansas City or Phoenix, Arizona, it doesn't make any difference, and you say, what do you think about what's happening in eastern Ukraine? Assuming he even knows where it is, his real question is immediately, what are we doing there? We don't live there. Eastern Ukraine is not Kansas. It's not Missouri. It's not Colorado. It's not Oregon, Washington, or Pennsylvania. What are we doing there? And then if you tell him, well, we're trying to help the Ukrainians. Well, why? What have the Ukrainians done? Are we allied with them? Why are we fighting with the Russians? Well, the Russians are bad. He said, well, why are they bad this time? In other words, this doesn't make any sense. It's all irrational. The challenge is to get rid of the people inside the Beltway. We have to expel them from office. We've got to move them out. And they inhabit and populate not just the government, but all the supporting cast of characters in the various so-called think tanks, which are really not think tanks, they're advocacy tanks, because they're owned by donors who pay these various places to advocate for their policies, whatever they are. When is that going to happen? We've got to get rid of them. Now, a lot of people went out and voted for President Trump. I certainly did. And I think everyone who did voted for him for the same reason, because they saw in him someone who would disrupt the money flow, who would put an end to a lot of this, who would say, no, we're not part of this. We don't want this. I don't know where these remarks are coming from that he's making so casually, but it's not consistent with what I know President Trump to actually believe.
I don't know if you know this retired Army Colonel Layton, but he's a strong supporter of General Kellogg. I want to play this clip for you as well, cut number 5.
If Russia does not agree to some kind of a ceasefire or at least a cessation of hostilities, then I could see the potential for the Trump administration to actually ramp up aid to the Ukrainians. In fact, Lieutenant General Kellogg, the special representative for Ukraine, has made such a statement. So if that does in fact happen, it could actually put more pressure on the Russians to end the war, or at least end their participation at the level that they're currently at. So if that happens, that could potentially end things where they are. I don't think Ukraine will be able to regain the territory that it has lost, about 20% or so of its country to the Russians since the February 2022 invasion. But if that is in fact the course of events where there is a ceasefire, we may see a situation kind of like what we're seeing on the Korean Peninsula, where there is a de facto peace, but it is in fact still a state of war. That could be one possible outcome of this. There's a type of ceasefire, or at least an armistice, but no real resolution to the issue, and no movement of troops beyond what we see.
All right, my bad. He's Air Force, not Army, which maybe explains his detachment from reality if he thinks that President Putin would accept an armistice like on the Korean Peninsula.
Well, Colonel Layton is on contract with CNN, and CNN's positions are very clear, and he's aligned with those, and those are consistent with the statements that he made. They are divorced from reality. In fact, the foreign minister of Russia, Sergei Lavrov, as well as President Putin, have made it very clear there will be no Korean-style outcome from this war.
Right.
We need to understand that they're in it for the long haul. They want their country to be secure. They are not going to allow rump Ukraine to metastasize in the future into this cancerous tumor aimed at Russia. They want peace. They want an end to the war. They're not interested in marching any further west. But again, as I said earlier, people need to take them seriously. If they see no alternative to it, they will do it. They're prepared to fight. And the Russian people are squarely behind President Putin. Forget all this nonsense about regime change and people are unhappy with this or that policy that President Putin represents. No head of state in any country in the world is 100% supported by everyone all the time. But I can tell you the Russian population is very definitely behind him on this. And we should not underestimate that. So I would just dismiss that as worse than fantastic. That is very dangerous thinking.
To your knowledge, have American troops ever fought side by side with Israeli troops? Do they even want us there?
Well, in the past, the Israelis have not wanted us there because they saw us as a potential constraint. And in fact, that's one of the things that people like myself and others have said was a virtue, that the Israelis did not want ground forces inside their country. They wanted to be responsible for their own defense as much as possible. But of course, this war has run out of control. They're overextended. They don't have forces that are required to be everywhere. And this is only going to get worse with the introduction of Israeli forces into Syria and potentially further in Lebanon, along with the likely confrontation with Iran. So I'm sure that there's some pressure being applied by Netanyahu's friends in Washington to get American soldiers into the action. But I don't think it's in our interest. It's not in our national interest. And I don't think it's going to help Israel very much.
One of Netanyahu's friends in Washington, whom some have called Netanyahu's lawyer, but who calls himself the Secretary of State of the United States, recently gave a very long television taped interview to the New York Times. Here's a brief clip in which he denies that genocide took place, cut number 6.
Do you, Secretary Blinken, worry that perhaps you have been presiding over what the world will see as a genocide?
No, it's not, first of all. Second, as to how the world sees it, I can't fully answer to that. But everyone has to look at the facts and draw their own conclusions from those facts. And my conclusion.
He didn't seem very comfortable to me with his own answer. Did he seem comfortable to you, Colonel?
I don't know. I've long since lost any respect for the man. The man does not represent the interests of the American people. He's not the Secretary of State for the United States. He's representing a foreign country with alien interests. This is the problem. We have no interest in the mass expulsion and murder of millions of Palestinian Arabs from their lands. That is not in the interest of the American people, and we don't want to do it. And this is after decades of systematic propagandizing of the American people to ultimately hate Muslims and Arabs in particular. I don't think the American people want our forces on the ground there. So I'm not really surprised at what he said. I'm just disappointed once again.
I'm disappointed when President Trump says that he's Israel's best friend. I think that's dangerous. I think it's sending a signal to Netanyahu, I'll give you even more than what old Joe gave you. What do you think?
Well, I think if he wants to be Israel's best friend, he ought to be interested in essentially
restraining,
de-escalating and disengaging. You know, this is not the time to escalate this war. Israel is already overstretched militarily. Economically, it's in ruins. It has no chance of holding all of the terrain that it aspires to conquer. and it's amassing enemies at a rate that boggles the mind. Virtually everyone in the Arab world, everyone in the Islamic world, and increasingly people in Europe and Asia are all turning against Israel, and unfortunately us, as a result of our unconditional support. So I think if he were a friend to Israel, he would warn against this overextension leading to Israel's destruction. But that doesn't appear to be on his mind at this point.
No, and appear to be surrounding himself, Colonel, with people who think the way you do, at least in the national security sphere. The person who thinks closest to you and me and our colleagues on this show in the national security sphere, Tulsi Gabbard, is nevertheless herself an ardent Zionist. Do you think Israel will look for an excuse to invade Egypt?
I think the Israelis, and first of all, remember, their general staff is very competent. The people at the top of the Israeli Defense Force, though they may not always express their views publicly, privately, they make their views very well known, and they are not happy with this overextension. Many of them are greatly concerned about it because they understand that everything depends upon our unconditional support for whatever they want to do. And they also know that their force as it is today is exhausted. But they're looking at Egypt, and they're really very concerned about General Sisi's longevity. Frankly speaking, General Sisi, who rules Egypt, was installed in large part by us against the Muslim Brotherhood, which is led by Mr. Erdogan in Turkey, that a man named Morsi had led to victory in Egypt. And we decided that it was not in the interest of the United States, Israel, and the West for a member of the Muslim Brotherhood to rule Egypt.
Let me just stop you for Colonel Macgregor. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for letting me play these clips that I knew would get under your skin. But sometimes they bring out the best in you. The best in you is always here, and I thank you very much for it. I hope we can see you again soon.
Okay, Judge. Thank you, and Happy New Year.
Right back at you and to your family. Thank you.
Hey, so the Lord has really wounded his enemies. And the self-proclaimed so-called white man is the Heavenly Father Yahweh's number one enemy. To prove that, this is Numbers 24. Numbers 24 in verse, start at 17, it reads, I shall see him, but not now. I shall behold him, but not nigh. There shall come a star out of Jacob, and a scepter shall raise out of Israel, and shall smite the corners of Moab, and destroy all the children of Sheth. And Edom shall be a possession, Seir also shall be a possession for his enemies. And Israel shall do valiantly. Out of Jacob shall come he that shall have dominion, which is Yahweh Shah, Lord and Savior, our big brother, and shall destroy him that remaineth of the city. And when he looked on Amalek, he took up his parable and said, Amalek was the first of the nations, but his latter end shall be that he shall perish forever. Also, when you go to I was thinking about this. I'll make this point. I want to read these first. This is Exodus 17 in verse let's start at verse, just to read this point here. Because it was Amalek, which is the chief house of the so-called white man, right? This is Exodus 17. But you read up, it's starting at verse 8. Then came Amalek and fought with Israel and Rephidim. And Moses said unto Joshua, choose out men and go out and fight with Amalek tomorrow, and I will stand on the top of the hill with the rod of God in my hand. Right? The point here, verse 16, for he said, because Yahweh have sworn that the Lord will have war with Amalek from generation to generation. It ain't said the Lord gonna have war with Ishmael or Elam or Moab or Ham or Ammon, right? This is Exodus 25. This is Exodus 25 and 17, which goes back to Deuteronomy 25 and 17, which goes back to the Exodus I was just reading. Deuteronomy 25 and 17, it reads, remember what Amalek did unto thee by the way when ye were come forth out of Egypt, which is what I was just reading in Exodus 17. How he met thee by the way and smote the hindermost of thee, even all that were feeble behind thee, when thou wast faint and weary. And he feared not God. Therefore it shall be, when the Lord thy power have given thee rest from all thine enemies round about, which showing you the Lord making sure Amalek is the chief of our enemies. Therefore it shall be, when Yahweh thy power have given thee rest from all thy enemies round about in the land which Yahweh thy God giveth thee for an inheritance to possess it, that thou shalt blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven, thou shalt not forget it. But as for now, the Lord said in Exodus 17 and 16, he gonna have war with Amalek from generation to generation. Right? This until we go back into the land of Israel. Then the Lord gonna have war with Amalek, right? Show you he's the chief of them, of the enemies. For to make this point, this is Psalms. It show you that the self-proclaimed so-called white man is the number one enemy. The Lord mentioned him first. This is Psalms 83 and 1. Keep not silent. Keep not thy silent, O power. Hold not thy peace, and be not still, O power. For lo, thy enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more remembrance. See how they said that the name of Israel may be no more remembrance? The Lord said he gonna blot out Amalek from under heaven. For they have consulted they have consulted together with one consent, they are confederate against thee, the tabernacles of Edom and Ishmael. And as the elder brother GMS inquired earlier, Apostle Hall was doing a premiere on his video he did, and he was making the point that it's gonna be Edom and then Ishmael in that order, man. Ishmael gonna be second behind Edom to get banged up, man, by the Lord. The tabernacles of Edom and the Ishmaelites and of Moab and the Hagarenes, Gebal and Ammon and Amalek. But the point I want to make is the Lord mentioned Edom first here, man. First. So, the Lord, I'm going to make this point, right? So, the Lord has wounded his enemies, man. Starting with the self-proclaimed so-called white man. This is the point I want to make. You don't hear, we have never heard, we have never heard, I have never heard, since I've been learning this truth to this point right now, I have never heard Chinese going against the Chinese. I have never heard Africans going against Africans. Hamites going against the Hamites, which is the so-called Africans. I have never heard Japanese going against the Japanese. I have never heard Ishmaelites going against the Ishmaelites. The Arabs against the Arabs. I have never heard it. I have never heard Iranians going against Iranians. I haven't heard it. You know what we hear constantly, day in and day out? For years, for generations, for decades, we have been hearing Edomites going against Edomites. Why? Because the Lord has wounded them. The so-called white man is the top enemy of the Heavenly Father, Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushua. Because what they did to the Israelites, right? Listen, man. In Genesis 27, this is what Rebekah told Jacob. Genesis 27 and 47. Genesis 27 and 42, Salaki. And these words of Esau, her elder son, were told to Rebekah, and she sent and called Jacob, her younger son, and said unto him, Behold, thy brother Esau, as touching thee, doeth comfort himself, proposing to kill thee. See, the self-proclaimed so-called white man is the top op, as these YNs call it, the opposition to so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, West Indians, and Haitians. And this is why, and we could say Trump, but it's the Lord. This is why the Lord got a controversy with the inhabitants of the Edomites, man. But look what he doing, and he using Edom to judge the Israelites. Hey, this is what the Lord said in Zechariah 12. Let me go here real quick. Just a spiritual ranting using precepts. So bear with me. This is Zechariah 12. No, I'm sorry. Is it 8? Hold on here, bear with me. That'll be 12. Let's see. Zechariah 12 and 9, it reads. Let's read. Let's start at 8. Zechariah 12 and... Yeah, let's start at 7. Yeah. Zechariah 12 and 7. It reads, The Lord also shall save the tents of Judah first, that the glory of the house of David and the glory of the inhabitants of Jerusalem do not magnify themselves against Judah. In that day shall Yahweh defend the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and he that is feeble among them at that day shall be as David. This is the point I wanted. Verse 7. Zechariah 12 and 7. Yahweh also shall save the tents of Judah first, that the glory of the house of David and the glory of the inhabitants of Jerusalem do not magnify themselves against Judah. The Lord is using the so-called white man to judge all 12 tribes, man. And as it always been, it was the northern kingdom that went into captivity first, and then the southern kingdom went into captivity. But I want to deal with this point, man, because Esau, Edom, the self-proclaimed white man, he been, as it say here, Psalm 64 and 2, hide me from the secret counsel of the work. Hide me from the secret counsel of the wicked, from the insurrection of the workers of iniquity, who with their tongue like a sword, which is their policies, and bend their bows to shoot their arrows, even bitter words. It's talking about them putting different laws into place so they can be justified in coming in with insurrection, like they say, the second Ezra 16, which the apostles, elder, bishop, and elders been hitting hard on lately. Apostle Holler, the premier was doing it earlier this morning. He probably did it yesterday, but he premiered it earlier this morning or today about we in Jacob trouble. It just it hasn't got worse yet, but we in it. That they may shoot in secret at the perfect, which is them doing this through laws. What it said in Wisdom Solomon 2, let their strength be the law of justice. See, this is how they shoot secretly. This is how they shoot in secret at the perfect. Suddenly they shoot at him and fear not. They encourage themselves in the evil matter. They commune on land snatch privily. They say, who shall see them? They search out iniquities. They accomplish a diligent search. Both the inward thought of every one of them, and the heart is deep. So This is what they've been doing. And talk about drugs, putting guns in the hood, diseases. Now we got chemtrails everywhere, and we eating defiled meats, defiled foods, right? So Esau covered every basis on destroying Jake, and we down. We down a slow, painful death, man. It's a slow death. The food we eat, the chemtrails we breathing in, the pollutions, working. And I was thinking about this devil. Hey, man, if it had not been for the Lord in Psalm 24, we'll be destroyed, because this devil, as it say in Daniel's, he gonna wear out the saints, man. He wear out the saints. Guess what? The only saints he's gonna wear out is the 2/3. The only saints that the so-called white man is gonna wear out, because all 12 tribes of Israel are saints, the men. Start with the men. But he's gonna wear out 2/3 because they don't have the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. They don't have Yahweh, Bahashim Yahushua, and the angels covering them, man. So he gonna wear 2/3 out, man. See, this is why I say, let me go here. I'm gonna come back to this. This is why I see in Revelations 17. I'm sorry, Revelations 12, it reads, Revelation 12 and 17. And the dragon was wroth with the woman and went to make war with the remnant of her seed. He ain't making war with 2/3 because they already wore out, man. They wore out because they don't have the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of Yahweh Bahashim Yahushua. See, the hopeful elect, we wore out too, but we got hope. We got faith. Hey, the Lord left us with hope. When you watch the movie Thor, the first one, when Odin scripted, he said no more titles, right? No more honor, no more rank, no more respect, none of that. He scripted them. He left them with hope, though. When you watch that movie, Odin would be in the place of Yahweh, and Thor would be Yahweh Shah, and the Lord scripted us. Or Thor is Yahweh Shah, but it represents all of Israel, that because we fell behind Yahweh Shah as Adam. So, but he left him with hope, though, because through the whole movie, his whole thing was he got to get back to Asgard. And see, that's our whole thing, man. We homesick. We trying to get back home. So the Lord left us with faith. Our faith. No, I'm sorry. He left us with hope, right? Our hope manifests to faith. Faith manifests to belief. Our belief hath turned to we know. So here it is. And the dragon was wroth with the woman and went to make war with the remnant of her seed. Why? Why he want to make war with the remnant? Which keep the commandments of God. 2/3 don't keep the commandments of the Lord. And have the testimony of Yahweh Shah Mashiach. See, this is about the testimony, man. As a guy came to camp the other Saturday, our first of the month camp, he said, man, y'all got some cojones. Y'all got humongous cojones. And for him to say we have humongous balls, that's our humongous testimony in Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shai, man. That's what he was saying spiritually. We have a great testimony amongst us, man, as the body. So, reading Genesis 27:42, it said Esau is comforted. He's comforted and preparing to kill Jake, right? Let me go back and get this. This is Genesis 3:15. It reads, this is what the Lord told the serpent, right? And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. So this is the same enmity from Genesis 3:15 that's in Revelations 12:17. And the dragon was wroth with the woman. That's the enmity. And went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep commandments of God and had a testimony of Yahweh Shah Mashiach. So this is Esau. Let me show it to you again. Genesis 27:42. And these words of Esau, her eldest son, were told to Rebekah, and she sent and called Jacob, her youngest son, and said unto him, Behold, thy brother Esau, as touching thee, doeth comfort himself, proposing to kill thee. Now, I ain't want to go too far off topic. I just want to make the point. So what the Lord is doing now, going back to that video I just played, verse 6, Psalm 64 and 6, they search out iniquities, they accomplish a diligent search, both of the inward thoughts of every one of them in the heart is deep. So this is what they've been doing us. They've been shooting at us secretly, making sure they got laws in place so they'll be justified in doing what they did to us. And they can have it on books. Yeah, see, we had this in the law. It's lawful for us to do this. Guess what? But God shall shoot at them with an arrow, suddenly shall they be wounded. So they shall make their own tongue to fall upon themselves. All that see them shall flee away. It say all that see them shall flee away. Why? Because this is unheard of. For a brother to go against another brother is unheard of, man. We have never heard Chinese go against the Chinese. We have never heard Japanese go against the Japanese. We have never heard Iranians go against Iranians. We have never heard Ishmaelites go against Ishmaelites, the Arabs against the Arabs. We haven't heard it, man. We haven't heard it, man. Africans going against Africans. We haven't heard it. This, what we seeing right now, this is the confusion. Because it said in Genesis 3 and 14, everywhere that the so-called white man go at, he's going to bring confusion, man. See, it's Esau Edom, the self-proclaimed white man, he's a confused one. Why? Let's go here. All the other nations just want to live in peace and take care of their nation, man. This shows you the so-called white man have no understanding. And all he has is confusion. Ecclesiasticus 16 and 23. He that wanteth understanding will think upon vain things, and a foolish man erring imagineth follies. This is why I say in Ecclesiastes 10, folly is set in great dignity. Why? Because this is all that the so-called white man can think on. Ecclesiastes 10 and 5. There is an evil which I have seen under the sun, as an error which proceeded from the ruler. Folly is set in great dignity, and the rich sit in low place. See, and what it say in Psalms 49? Their dignity shall proceed in themselves, man. Look at this. Psalms 49 and 12. Nevertheless, man it is an honor. Who's in honor right now? The so-called white man. Nevertheless, man being in honor, abideth not. He is like the beasts that perish. This their way is their folly. See? Yet their posterity approve their sayings. See? This their way is their folly, man. Yeah, why? Because this all the so-called white man can think on, man. Let's go back to it again. Ecclesiasticus 16, 23. He that wanteth understanding will think upon vain things. He can't get understanding of the Lord, so he had to come up with his own imaginations. He that wanteth understanding will think upon vain things, and a foolish man err and imagine follies. Which, here it is, Ecclesiasticus 19 and 22. The knowledge of wickedness is not wisdom. The knowledge of wickedness is not wisdom, man. Neither at any time the counsel of sinners prudence. There is a wickedness and the same an abomination, and there is a fool wanting in wisdom. See, Esau Edom, the self-proclaimed white man. He can't get it. The Lord said it here, Job. This is Job 21 and 12. No, what is that? Job, I'm sorry. Job 28 and 12, Salakia. Job 28 and 12, right here. But where shall wisdom be found? And where is the place of understanding? Man knoweth not the price thereof, neither is it found in the land of the living. John said this: if the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of the Lord is not found in the land of the living, where is it found at? John chapter 3 and 27. John answered and said, a man can receive nothing except it be given him from heaven. So Esau created his own understanding, which is vain. One more time, gotta read it again. Ecclesiasticus 16 and 23. I'm gonna keep drilling it. Different articles, same precepts. Different video, different Edomite videos, different information, same precepts. Ecclesiastes 16 and 23. He that wanteth understanding will think upon vain things. Vain is empty. So the so-called white men have created empty glory, vain glory, and a foolish man err in imagining follies, man. Yeah. So again, it said they that see this in Psalms, they're gonna flee from them, cause this is madness. You talking about your brother? Psalms 64 and 7. But God shall shoot at them with the arrow, suddenly shall they be wounded, so they shall make their own tongue to fall upon themselves. All that see them shall flee away. Look at the title of this video. NATO leaves, Germany leaves NATO. Look, the alliance has collapsed. The title of the lesson, the alliance has collapsed, man. You know, Elder Yashwan was going into his lesson, right? And I had to freeze. I had to take a screenshot of the ones he was using, right? Look at these. U.S. undermining world order. Germany president. Frank Walter has warned against turning global politics into a den of robbers. See, he talking about the West. U.S. undermining world order. Here's the other one. I screenshot these from Elder Yashawama's channel when he was doing this lesson. Turkey warns the U.S. and Israel to stay out of Iran and calls out Israel for fueling protesters. See? Turkey warns the U.S. and Israel to stay out of Iran and calls out Israel for fueling protesters. This is... the alliance is collapsing, man. EU troops might be needed to stop a U.S. showdown in Greenland. This is unheard of. This is supposed to be Edomite United, U-N-I-T-Y, Edomite, U-N-I-T-Y, Edomites. Man, ain't no Edomite unity, man. Look at this. Now this is, I was reading it earlier in Isaiah 10. Donald Trump says, my own morality is the only thing that can stop me from world dominance. I don't need international law. Look at this. I was just reading this in Isaiah. This is Isaiah right here, 10. Look at this. Isaiah 10 and 12. The Lord say, wherefore shall come to pass that when the Lord hath performed his whole work on Mount Zion and on Jerusalem, which is the elect being sealed, right? First, they had to go through the discipline, right? The Lord said he nourished us with discipline in Ecclesiastes 17. First, we had to go through. Oh, it's also in Jeremiah 30. The Lord say he will not leave us altogether unpunished, but he will correct us in measure. So this is what it means when he say he will when he performed his whole work upon Mount Zion. So first, it was the discipline being corrected, right? Being reactivated to the truth. Wherefore shall come to pass that when Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua performed his whole work upon Mount Zion and on Jerusalem, I will punish the fruit of the stout heart of the king of Assyria and the glory of his high looks. That's that Daniel 7, 19 and 20. Talking about the Edomites, man. America, Babylon the Great, first and foremost. For he said, who said? The so-called white man. By the strength of my hand. This is the Trump speech. What Elder Yashwan had in this video. For he said, by the strength of my hand, I have done it. And by my wisdom, for I am prudent. And I have removed the bounds of the people and have robbed their treasures. And I have put down the inhabitants like a valiant man. And my hand have found as a nest the riches of the people. This was him boasting about taking the president Maduro. And as one gathered eggs that are left, have I gathered all the earth. See, that's the so-called white man as a whole. Start with Alexander the Greek. And there was none that moved the wing or opened the mouth or peeped. And that's what it tell you in First Maccabees. It said the earth was quiet before Alexander. Then the Lord say, shall the axe boast itself? Shall the axe boast itself against him that hewed therewith? So here is Trump talking trash, but the Lord controlling him. But that's what Isaiah 10, 13, and 14 talking about. Isaiah 10, 13, and 14 is Trump talking about this here, what Elder Yashua just put up. Donald Trump says, my own morality is the one only thing that can stop me from world dominance. I don't need international law. You know what this sound like to me? This sound like Maya Angelou Bauer. What did he say? Give me control of the money, and I care not who make the laws. And here's the other one. Elder Yashua put this on this channel. Maloney, Europe should talk to Russia. Italy's prime minister added that the EU should appoint an envoy to deal directly with Russia President Vladimir Putin, as since the beginning of the negotiations, many voices have been speaking out. Now I pulled the article up on my other phone. Let me read it. It says here, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni said on Friday that Europe should reopen high-level dialogue with Russia, urging the appointment of a special envoy. Meloni echoed calls from last month by French President Emmanuel Macron, who said that it would be in our interest as Europeans and Ukrainians to find the right framework to re-engage Russia in talks rather than relying on U.S. negotiators. See? So what we at here is what the title of this lesson is. The alliance has collapsed, man. This is the Lord shutting down the power of the self-proclaimed so-called white man. Let me get this. Obadiah. Same old precepts, man. Obadiah 1 and 7. All the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee. They that eat thy bread have laid a wound under thee. See, this is the wound the Lord had gave them when you read in Psalm 64. The Lord said he shot them with an arrow, suddenly shall they be wounded. They that eat thy bread have laid a wound under thee. There is none understanding in him. Shall I not in that day, saith Yahweh, even destroy the wise men of Edom, and understanding out of the mount of Esau. So in Ecclesiastes 16:23, it said, he that wants of understanding will think upon vain things. The Lord removed his understanding. The only understanding that the Lord gave these Edomites is to create the missiles, the infrastructure for the mark of the beast, to pollute the food, to pollute the air, to pollute the people, which is him. The self-proclaimed so-called white man has weaponized everything to target you so-called Negro, Latino, Native Americans, West Indians, and Haitians. That's all he good for, man. That and thy mighty men, O Teman, shall be dismayed to the end that every one of the mount of Esau may be cut off by slaughter. And I was going to that earlier, right? I was looking this up. Culling the herd, right? Culling definition. It's a reducing of a wild animal population by selective slaughter. This is what the Lord doing to the Edomites and 2/3 of Jake. Look at this. So similar words for cull. They say slaughter, kill, destroy. See? They got the other one here. Yeah. So this is what the Lord doing, man. We just read it to you. So let's get this one. Revelation 17. 16. And the 10 horns thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. For God hath put in their hearts to fulfill his will, and to agree, and give that kingdom unto the beast, until the words of God shall be fulfilled. Oh, Daniel 2. Once the elect gets sealed, man, the RFID micros see here being mandatory. It's gonna speed up, man. Daniel 2 and 43. They show you right here in Daniel 2 that there was always a separation amongst the Edomites and the heathen nations. The Edomites and the sons of men. Daniel 2 and 43. And whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, talking about the Edomites, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with miry clay. See? There was gonna always be a separation, man. Them Edomites, man, these some stout, hard, as Daniel 7 and 20 tell you, man. His look is more stout than his fellows, man. But this is the cause of their downfall, man. That arrogant pride spirit, man. But this is the self-proclaimed so-called white man, his fast race back to the bottom. This is their fast race back to the bottom, man. Anyway, Lord was edifying. I'm going to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rekah, Kodash. Double honors to the apostles, elder, bishop, and elders of great millstone, who rule well, who teach well, who are the apostles and elders of all Israel, whether accepted or not. And a sincere salutation to all the Akim believing this truth and pushing this truth throughout the four winds of the earth, the entire world, shedding light to the whole elect. Shalom to the Akwath who are listening, learning. If your sister listen, learning. While for tuning in, may Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shah continue to bless you in your houses. May the blessing of Alexia be upon your houses. Till next time, I say Shalom. Wa Oba. I'm going to close with this. Isaiah 42 and 13. Yahweh shall go forth as a mighty man. He shall stir up jealousy like a man of war. He shall cry, yell, roar. He shall prevail against his enemies. Let me get this. Again, we don't hear none of the other nations going against themselves. We only hear the so-called white man doing this, man. Luke chapter 12. You don't hear Chinese going against Chinese, man. You don't hear Japanese going against Japanese. You don't hear Iranians going against Iranians. You don't hear Arabs going against Arabs. You don't hear Africans going against Africans. We only hear so-called white people going against so-called white people. Right? Revelations 13, starting at 1. This is their system. This is a beast system. This is the Edomite system, the self-proclaimed so-called white man system. Luke 12 and 51. Suppose ye that I'm come to give peace on earth, I tell you nay, but rather division. And this division is in the house of the wicked, man, the so-called white man. Isaiah 19 and 2. And I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians, and they shall fight everyone against his brother, and everyone against his neighbor, city against city, and kingdom against kingdom. Matthew 12 and 25. And Yahweh shall know their thoughts, and said unto them, every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation, and every house, and every city or house divided against itself shall not stand. Luke 11 and 17. But he knowing their thoughts said unto them, every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation, and a house divided against a house falleth. Mark 3 and 25. And if a kingdom be divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. And if a house be divided against itself, that house cannot stand. And if Satan rise up against himself and be divided, he cannot stand but have an end. And this Satan is talking about Esau Edom, the self-proclaimed so-called white man. Ecclesiasticus 21 and 27. When the ungodly curseth Satan, he curseth his own soul.